All right. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So good to see some friendly faces and some new names and faces as well. Let me keep admitting people. But yeah, welcome to the contributors track of Backstage Community Sessions. We're still going strong after 1.5 years. So it's really nice to see this event still happen. Today in the agenda, we have two things. One is a Spotlight contributor chat, as you already might be aware of. And second one is a demo or a talk from folks at Anaplan. So Rob and Eric, thank you for being here. You are co-hosts, so you should be able to share your screen. But we'll come to that. So let's kick it off. The most important news of all is BackstageCon happening as a one-day event during KubeCon in Detroit in October. The agenda is live. Suzanne gave an overview of the agenda. I pasted a link in the chat. Please check it out. If you're in the US, it might be a very short trip. There's a lot of people going there. Yeah, have some chat around backstage and see what new adopters are doing, see what very old adopters are doing, and yeah, seek some inspiration. The second one is something Francisco shared the other day, is that we have reached 7,000 members in the Discord community, Francisco. So that's a great number. So if I go now, there's about 600 people online. So that forum has really become something for support. And if you need help around Backstage or DevX or anything in general, you will find people there, experts in areas, of course, the maintainers and other people who will help you out. So yeah, please be part of the Discord group. And if you're not, the link is in the README of the Backstage project on GitHub. So yeah, moving on for the Spotlight contributor chat. Unfortunately, our contributor got sick and he couldn't recover today, but he sent some message over the email, which I would read on behalf of him. So drum rolls, he's Marco Crivellaro from DAZN. And he says that he's very sorry he can't make it today. But he said that I got to know about Backstage via Changelog podcast. Some of you might remember it. And I think it aired right after Backstage was open sourced. It had so many things we wanted to ourselves for quite some time. It sounded just the right platform. And when asked what is something you like about the platform, he says the thing I like about Backstage is its extensibility via plugin. It is so well done and elegant. So kudos to the maintainers and everyone who pitched in on the Backstage extensibility model. I think personally, it's brilliant. It's one of the things which is unique to platforms like Backstage is that you can do whatever you want to do with Backstage. It's highly extensible and customizable. I asked some more things from Marco, and he said, I won't answer them today, because I am giving a talk on BackstageCon on 24th of October. And the talk is titled, What We Learned During Our Journey in Using Backstage at DAZN. And I'll answer them in my talk. So cheeky plug, but yeah, catch Marco during BackstageCon and congratulations to him once he catches on the recording. So yeah, thank you, Marco and the team at DAZN. You guys are contributing a lot in Backstage, and we really appreciate all the effort you're putting in here. So kudos, and see you at BackstageCon. So yeah, let's jump right in to the demo of today. So Rob, Eric, sorry, not Eric, it's Erin, my bad. So Rob and Erin, hello. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you have to share with us today.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So let me just get my slides up. Hopefully you can see the main screen and not the supporting screen. Yeah, so I'm Rob Kingscote, and we also have Erin Ahmed. We'll do intros in a couple of slides, but here we're here to talk to you about how we comprehended self-service as a design principle in Backstage. I know this is a contributors call, but I was a product manager for the platform team delivering Backstage. So we found this thinking had some value to our team and wanted to share it back to the community. So yeah, to get going, where are we? Here we go. Yeah, so dive right into it and kind of break down what you're going to get from today. We're two product people and we've got a lot of value out of the open source community, but as we're not engineers, it's a little more challenging to contribute back. So we wanted to do what we could. We'll share our lessons learned, including how we believe self-service thinking can help to compound the business value we're trying to deliver for our engineers, or allow our engineers to deliver for the business. And hopefully we might help the community to build and design consistency for their consumers, even as your Backstage deliveries scale. So our origin story, I work for Anaplan. It's a B2B SaaS company in modeling and planning. And Erin works for Slalom, which is a management consultancy. And after an engagement between our companies, I got word that there was maybe some remaining budget kicking around. And so I jumped on the opportunity to have some design resource in my team, even if just for a short period of time, for some fixed budget and fixed scope. And the game Erin and I set out to play was, in a world of fixed budget and fixed scope, what's the most scalable way we can think to design a developer portal for our engineers building it, so my team, and our engineers consuming it, our little C customer. And that's really what we feel a lot of people might be in this scenario here today, is you've got engineers to try and work out if Backstage is the approach forward, or if it will reach adoption within your company, or produce the business value. And design resources aren't always top on the list of your availability. So hopefully some of our assets might help you take the edge off. So our problem space, overall my area was trying to increase software delivery productivity to decrease time to revenue producing features for the business. My customer base, little C customers, aka internal engineers, not big C customers like paying customers. There's 38 teams that are looking after 102 services, and they're grouped by 3 architectural functional areas. The team I was looking after, my platform teams, they were looking after 48 enabling services grouped by 6 functional buckets, CI, CD, and developer experience, which I mentioned specifically for later context. They were the team, or are the team that own Backstage. And its inconsistency across this sort of surface area of platform teams is inevitable without some kind of technical design or human encouragement to operate in a particular manner or in a particular practice. And being the product manager for these 6 areas, I saw a gap for design support, and we didn't have access to it internally, sadly. But as many of you know, if you don't solve for inconsistency to reduce cognitive load early on, it's a lot harder to do it in the future. And in a company that was growing or is growing, platform complexity will continue to scale as we introduce new teams and new technologies. So having some kind of asset that helps guide my teams, even when I'm not there to necessarily stringently review everything, given I'm managing 6 teams. Again, we saw real value in trying to create something that met that need. So lots of resources highlight the benefits of enabling self-service developer portals, of which you're probably very familiar as you're using Backstage, such as Team Topologies, Martin Fowler, Hymantec, Accelerate. I've included a lot of my references in this deck, which I'll share later. But the principle being platform teams supporting streamlined teams to reduce their cognitive load, allowing streamlined teams to focus more on delivering business value. And if we take that view and combine it with the platform as product thinking, aka treating your platform like any other product, build, test, learn with your users. These are the kind of solid policies that we're applying to our problem, and we kind of took forward to approach this. Self-service, our offerings should be self-serve, allowing teams to make use of them when they need to, really. We want to always be minimizing cognitive load, so customers can discover, engage, onboard, and operate tooling in a consistent manner. So teams spend as little time learning to use tooling and the tooling we're providing, and more time delivering value with it. From a thinnest viable platform perspective, aiming to collaborate with a few teams to validate our use cases and iterate through our solutions, usually falling into the kind of innovator or early adopter category of our user groups. And really thinking about what is the thinnest viable platform that we need to solve those teams' problems and accelerate those needs. And then finally, delivering only what is needed. So focusing on the customer needs for the current moment in time, and not adding anything that isn't expressly identified through engagement with your actual customers. So these are our general policies as we follow as we deliver Backstage, but they still apply to how Erin and I set out to design these assets and this thinking that we landed on. So finally, from me, what are the goals of all this design work? What were we hoping to achieve? We've mentioned cognitive load a lot. I get bored of saying cognitive load quite often, but we set out to decrease what our customers have to think about when they're interfacing with our tooling, regardless of which platform team built it. Again, 6 teams serving many, many customers, and one product manager. It's hard to stay on top of all of the work they're doing without becoming a bottleneck. So assets that scale and build autonomy were really foundational. Discoverability. So again, we have lots of customers and there's only a few of us. So we wanted to make sure that discoverability was high on our list. As we build and develop these tools, making it very easy for other teams to find what is available and understand how it can help them, even if we're not necessarily there to be hand-holding them through every step. That takes on simplified onboarding, so consistent self-serve onboarding. So our tooling is available when they need to use it or when the teams are mature enough to use it, another factor. And making sure that we try and streamline those efforts as much as possible. It could be as simple as consistent documents to start with, which TechDocs does a wonderful job to support, or it could be something a little bit more abstracted, like a step-by-step flow that helps users go from 0 to 1 with this new tool. And then finally, accelerating time to value. So this is slightly, this talk is quite meta, so apologies, or buckle up rather. But creating design patterns and frameworks to make available to my platform team, so they can continue to deliver faster value to our customers. Once we have these consistent patterns in place, that's just something they don't have to think about anymore, and they themselves can get back to just delivering value for their business, which is the little C customer. So that's me. I'm going to hand over to Erin now.
Thanks, Rob. So when we started on this project, as Rob mentioned, we were originally setting out to achieve those goals with the software engineers, or those little C customers that we keep referring to. But as we got into it, we discovered that the same principles and the same policies could be applied to all stakeholders along the value chain. So we could focus on increasing the efficiency of the software engineers to create business value, but there's additional advantage in applying those same policies and goals to the platform teams that are enabling those engineers, and so on and so forth. So starting with Rob as product and myself as design, that looked like us taking a look at how might we reduce the cognitive load, or as I like to say, mental gymnastics, and simplify the onboarding to the layout of the application or the information architecture to the developer experience team, which is the light blue and 2. And then from there, how might the developer experience team simplify and streamline the real estate for the developer infrastructure team to develop their plugins in a consistent manner. And Rob mentioned earlier, the charter of his team is to decrease time through revenue producing features. And what we realized going through this process of preparing for development is that we could potentially set off a chain of marginal gains by starting with how we were even serving assets to developer experience team and so on. Because reducing overhead ultimately serves the business, but you don't need to just start with the quote unquote end user, which in this case was the internal software engineers. You can start with how you are even serving the teams enabling those teams. Okay, so getting into the good part, how we did this, our approach. So first and foremost, as product people, we started with personas and use cases. Because from a product and UX perspective, the more we can center the user in a development team's mind, the better. And from there, we put together an information architecture, which outlined the main sidebar navigation for the core features, as well as the relationships between the various entity page types, and where we imagined the Anaplan specific custom plugins would fit in. These two assets primarily serve the developer experience team because their responsibility was to set up the initial application and the libraries for the developer infrastructure group to go in and play in as their sandbox. And then to enable the dev infra group, we created what we're calling a component library that basically triangulated the highest use components, the link to where that component lives in the Backstage repo, and its storybook link if it was available. And then in collaboration with each individual developer infrastructure team, we created clickable prototypes for each onboarding flow onto a homegrown or third-party service. So the example you're seeing on the far right is a prototype of a flow to set up a service with a harness pipeline, as an example. And so what we wanted to do lastly is just spotlight on those first 3 assets, which we'll ultimately share with the community. So quick spotlight on personas. This is pretty, bread and butter, product discovery definition stuff. But the first thing we set out to do was define who the personas were that we were going to be solving for. The primary personas are the ones we anticipated having the most impact in the immediate term. Pretty obvious: application or service engineer, infrastructure developer, DevOps engineer. But what we found is that there are some other non-obvious personas that ultimately will use the platform, and we'll be looking for different cuts of the same information. So we wanted to make sure we had a line of sight to those needs and pain points, even if what we intended to build initially was not going to serve them immediately. And that's the thinnest viable platform at work. We plan to share all 8 personas with you in case you might find them useful or relatable. But what I think is really the most useful foundational asset was this information architecture. It served to orient folks quickly to the layout of the Backstage application and how the various entities related to each other, which we found to had a bit of a learning curve associated with it, unless you were familiar with the documentation or you had spent a bit of time in the Backstage demo app. And so similarly to the component library, though it's very small here, there's a link under entity page, under the component name, there's a link to where that component lives in the Backstage repo. So any developer looking at this IA could find it quickly and understand how it would be rendered and how it relates to the other pages or the other components in the application. And then the component spotlight on the component library. So this was really meant to serve the developer infrastructure group as they were setting out to build for the use cases that were not covered necessarily by the prototypes that we created, which were kind of the highest value use cases. So what we created here is essentially in the design file, each component is a symbol that are organized in the same way that the material design system groups components. And then, as I mentioned before, we triangulate the link to where the component lives in the repo and the storybook link if it was available. The component library here covers the highest use components. So the ones that kind of show up the most in our kind of like our initial prototypes or initial initial information architecture, but also came with the instruction that if there was a surface or a data display element that wasn't listed here, to reference the material design system and rely on open source frameworks as much as possible so that we're not reinventing the wheel. So we'll share all three of these things. It's actually 8 personas, and then this information architecture and component library is all one asset. But that's that's how we will conclude. We'll open it up for questions. Thank you for letting us present and giving us the platform to share our experience. It's been fun.
Really appreciate the demo, Robin, and lots of comments in the chat. Yeah, let's kickstart some Q&As. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. The first one I wanted to ask was, how did you decide on Backstage? Because you went out to create a portal and you could have gone anywhere. So what's one favorite thing about Backstage for you, and something you still like?
Honestly, from my side, and the reason that we wanted to try and do this is we struggled to find anywhere with a more active community. The open source nature of Backstage, while not unique to developer portals, just had everyone was always responsive to questions and curiosities, and the extensibility of it meant that we could set out and get accelerated to value quite quickly. But it feels like the capabilities and maturity of this is only really getting going, and it's nice to be part of that. That was a big decider for me and the team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I came into the project after the kind of like selection was made. I know that Rob and the team evaluated a couple of different tools, did an initial hackathon, and ultimately landed on Backstage, and then kind of that's where I entered the picture. But I'll answer the question about what I like about it. I echo the sentiment about the community definitely coming in and orienting to the docs and joining the Discord early on and seeing how active the community was and how willing like they were, you all were, to answering our questions in the early days. It's unlike anything that I've seen before, though again, not an engineer, so not interacting a ton with different open source projects, but got a lot of value out of this in the early days.
Awesome. And even as an engineer, it's the same story. This is a beautiful community. So yeah, thank you.
So yeah, if there aren't any more questions, we'll share the assets. It might bring value. It might take the edge off the fact that we've collated all this information together for you, and hopefully you can take something away from it. It's not a complete monumental mind explosion of comprehension, but I know when we gave it to our engineers, it helped us them move a lot quicker without having to contemplate design decisions, which from my perspective was excellent. As a product manager, getting things that all looked and felt the same without spending consistent time on design discussions was of huge value to me.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your time.
Do it. Yeah, and do you have a link to it, or is it?
Yeah, we're going to share it in the visual design Discord channel for Backstage.
Awesome. Thanks for the shout out. If you don't have anywhere to go, I do have one last question.
Yeah, sure.
So one thing which adopters especially like struggle with Backstage is that it provides, you mentioned 4 things. You mentioned discoverability, cognitive load, onboarding, and there was one more. And every company has those 4 things. Like there's a lot of things they want to solve at once with Backstage. And then that's one area where they make some mistakes is that they try to solve all at once and eventually land nowhere and see no progress. What was your story here? Did you choose one or two things in the beginning, and then there's some parts of Backstage which you still haven't touched and maybe will touch later on? Like, do you have a similar experience?
So the foundational piece for Backstage, which seems obvious now that we've delivered it, was the software catalog. It made us, it was freely available, so the structure was already ready to get going, but it forced us to have quite formal conversations with our engineering counterparts to try and put some scalable structure and taxonomy to how the engineering organization was operating. Beyond that, we set out to try and for historical reasons, we had some design limitations to our harness deployment pipelines. And so the prototype that you saw Erin walk through was, how do we move in a self-serve manner from a shared deployment pipeline to a team-owned individual pipeline. So we did set out with one particular use case initially and saw success there. But I don't think our success story is all roses. You know, adoption and human change is always really challenging when you're competing for priorities. But Backstage is still the primary tool that we're moving forward with as our interface. We are doing some slight rethinking, as you said, about trying to take on too much at one go, and just really starting to focus on more acute use cases to continue to build that momentum. But yeah, I would say out of all the things that were freely available out the gate, you're focusing on the software catalog, actually having those conversations with the engineering organization to have that structure and taxonomy was foundational for the progress that we've made.
Cool. Erin, do you have anything to add?
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's funny because we didn't mention it in the presentation, but it's something we talked about. Yeah, it's not like mind-blowing or necessarily unique. It's actually pretty obvious if you like go back and look at the docs. It's the first core feature is software catalog. But it really does make sense to start with that because it is one way to draw people to the platform, because it provides value immediately. If you can register your service and see how it relates to other services, that's value out the gate. And you don't need to do anything special. It just, you turn it on and go.
Yeah, but I also like what you did with software templates. I saw a little GIF in the prototype section. I think that was good to integrate with the custom provider. That's exactly why those actions exist. I'm sure. I want to kudo your engineers for implementing it. There's some questions in the chat. I don't think you're in a rush. If you are, please let me know. Otherwise, Josh is asking, what does your customer feedback loop look like to know what to focus on next?
Sure. So much like having to hunt for spare cash for Erin to come and help me out, I'm also the user researcher in the team. So honestly, wherever I can try and reuse industry standard practices, I do that. It's the same way we wanted to create this asset. You know, there is the goal, the value we deliver is helping our engineers move faster. It's not in necessarily revolutionizing how they do things. So I would work with a particular pillar of my organization, say test frameworks team. I'd run some user research sessions to broadly identify the problems our teams, our big C customers, our customers are experiencing. Once we had initially framed what the themes of problems we were going after, and prioritized what problems we wanted to alleviate for our customers, the engineers on my side would, once they had to say a feature set available, they would already have had that relationship during the user research session developed with the particular team that we've identified to work with. We always try and work with the innovators or early adopters who show the enthusiasm and excitement to lean into what we're trying to deliver. It's very hard to build these things and throw them at people when they don't have time. So I'd say the key takeaways are finding your innovators and early adopters. And I, again, only being one person, would set up enough momentum around the problem space that we're going after, say test data injection, and coach my teams on how to run the user research sessions, or make sure that I'm checking in with them sufficiently to get them focusing on the right areas. We're all our teams are internal, so it's quite easy to get time with our customers to get feedback, which, you know, no one's more than a Slack message away. So yeah, again, nothing revolutionary, but that's half the point. If I can share a document with my team on how to run a session or what to look out for, and I can coach them more to be self-sufficient, then that gives me more time to work across the different pillars that I'm owning.
Yeah, and I believe internal customers are the easiest and also one of the most valuable feedback you'll get ever. So even for Backstage, we have an internal like 3,000 engineer community, and then there's external community. And always see like the internal conversations are much more friendly, and they're very open, sometimes even rude about, you know, like I don't like this and I don't like that. So yeah, they're much more honest, and lot of value in there. One more question from Josh. What kind of measurements do you look at to understand if you're actually making an impact with your customers and big C customers?
So in terms of the maturity of our, say, measurement of the DORA metrics, whether or not we're impacting software delivery productivity, I would say there's some room for improvement. We look for adoption and retention within the actual tooling we're delivering. And we look to, I guess we're focusing more on throughput to production. Whether it comes down to actual impact to our big C customers, that's more down to the wider product organization focusing on the capabilities they're delivering. So our impact would be, can the engineering teams move faster, more effectively, and deliver safely to production? Whether or not the product teams using that additional velocity are creating measurable value, I don't need to try and play in their world. That's not a category of measurement that I need to pay attention to. Yeah, my focus is very much on can I help our engineers move faster and deliver more safely to production. And we focus primarily on trying to measure the DORA metrics identified in Accelerate as our key indicators of if we're moving quickly, at a kind of as lagging indicators to our success. But yeah, I would say we are still very much on this journey, and I would love our data maturity and metrics to be higher, but you can only focus on so much.
Oh yeah,
thanks for your questions, Josh.
It's definitely a long journey. Yeah, thank you, Josh. Really good questions. So yeah, it's really a long journey for all of us. Even actually at Spotify, we think we can do so much more, and we're always thinking like, what does 2025 look like? And so yeah, no one is settled. Everyone is here building great portals. So yeah, thank you for your time. If there are no questions in the chat, then I really appreciate your presentation. Please share the resources in visual design. And yeah, thank you for contributing and adopting Backstage.
No worries. Thank you for Backstage.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was Rob and Erin sharing the adoption journey. And that is all in the scheduled agenda. Someone was asking me, how do you get on the agenda? So that's a great question. So the simplest answer is go to backstage.io/community. That's where you can find upcoming events, mostly Backstage Community Sessions. And then there's usually a GitHub issue on Backstage Community repository where anyone can come and add what they want to share. So the next one will be created within a few days. And then you can, of course, go there and add in your agenda. Of course, there are Discord channels, meetups on the Backstage Discord channel. That's where we always update whenever there's a new issue. And of course, follow a bunch of people here you see, and then they'll share on Twitter and LinkedIn and whatnot. So yeah, that's how you get on the agenda. Are there any, since this is a contributors track, we are not streaming this right now. So are there any questions in anyone's mind about this presentation or about Backstage? There's a couple of a lot of maintainers here as well. So if you have any technical questions as well, shoot them in the chat or open your mic and just go ahead. Yeah. This is your time. If not, I'll just remind everyone that you can nominate Backstage contributors using this link. If you see someone doing excellent work in the community, which is a lot, there's a lot of people doing excellent work. So yeah, please celebrate them, add in their name, write a few words, and then we'll make sure we put them on Spotlight. Is the next contributor session coming live from KubeCon? That is an excellent question, Phil. I don't know, Suzanne, I think she'll figure it out. She once already has done a community session from KubeCon Europe, so I don't think that it will be a big deal. Cool. Going once. Any questions, any thoughts, any comments? Going twice. All right. All right. Thank you, Erin and Rob, again. Thanks, everyone who asked questions. And see you next month. And hopefully see you in person in Backstage Con during KubeCon Detroit. Have a really good day. Keep rocking. You're all amazing. Bye.